For joining us on our streaming service for your First Alert drought forecast. I'm your First Alert meteorologist, Callie Zanandri. The latest U.S. drought monitor was released Thursday morning, and not much changed compared to last week. The western half of the state is still under severe and extreme drought conditions. Now, you might be wondering why, especially after record rainfall and mountain snow earlier this week. Well, it all comes down to timing. The data cutoff for the drought report is Tuesday morning, meaning most of the recent moisture didn't make it into this week's update. But the good news, we should start to see some improvement in the drought conditions as that moisture gets factored into next week's report. And speaking of dry conditions, just because it's fall, that doesn't mean you can stop watering your trees and your shrubs. Joining us now is horticulture expert John Mergel to explain why fall and winter water matters more than you might think. Welcome, John.
Hi, Callie.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Now, John, many homeowners assume they can turn off their sprinklers once it cools off, and then they just stop watering. But why is watering in the fall and winter months so important?
Well, particularly for woody plants like trees and shrubs, watering in the fall helps set that plant up for having a great winter and then a great spring afterwards. You don't want your trees and shrubs to go into the winter dormancy period stressed, and the number one stress that most of those plants experience around here is drought.
Now, how often and how much should people be watering during the fall and winter months?
So the answer that we give for a lot of things in horticulture is it depends. And it depends on what kind of tree you have, how warm the temperatures are, and what the natural precipitation has been like. The very thirstiest trees that tend to grow in Denver, at least in the warmer parts of the summer, want even an inch of precipitation a week. So you could be looking at pretty frequent watering, although as it cools off into the fall, assuming that we have a normal transition to more autumnal temperatures, then you could reduce the frequency of water. What we like to say is you got to get out there and check the actual conditions in the ground. So probe around into the soil. You can use a big screwdriver. You could use your finger. You could use a fancier moisture probe if you want to. If the top inch or so of soil is starting to get dry, you should consider watering in the fall, especially as those trees are preparing for dormancy.
And so explain that to me. You would push the screwdriver into the ground, and what are you looking for?
Yep, so if the screwdriver goes in nice and easy, that means that there's moisture in the soil, because that moisture lubricates the soil particles against the screwdriver, so it can go in pretty simply. If the soil is really dry, you're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort trying to get that screwdriver into the ground, and you know, I should probably water out here.
Now, how do your recommendations change for newly planted shrubs or trees versus something that's been well established?
Newly planted shrubs and trees need more regular water because they have a limited root zone. You know, their roots basically are still in the pot that they came in. It's just in the ground now. So you want to make sure that those don't dry out, because if those roots dry out, that tree is not going to be healthy in the spring, might even be dead. So you want to make sure that you're watering that area where you know the roots are, and making sure that that soil, especially if it was a potting mix or something that you didn't get a good integration with the native soil with, could dry out more quickly than the native soil too. So water that original root ball that you planted and make sure you're checking on it so that it doesn't dry out. More established trees have roots out as far as the tree is tall, is the rule of thumb. So you can water a bigger area and they can exploit a much bigger area for moisture.
Now, there are a lot of watering tools out there, from soaker hoses to deep root needles. Are there certain methods that are more effective during the fall and winter, especially during drought conditions?
So not really. The biggest consideration is to make sure that the water goes into the soil and doesn't run off. So I like to just use a spot sprinkler. You could even just turn the hose down nice and low. Just make sure that the water is infiltrating the soil and not flowing off of your property and down the gutter, because that doesn't do anybody any good. You can buy those deep root watering systems if you like to. Our state turfgrass specialist used to say that if it helps you sleep at night, you go for that. But there's no need for a special tool. Just a regular sprinkler on the surface works just fine.
All right, and how can homeowners actually monitor whether their trees and shrubs are getting enough water?
So this takes observation of the tree. So the first thing to check is, like we mentioned, make sure the soil is damp. Long term, though, you want to check the condition of the tree. Is it growing well? Are the leaves the correct size, or are they awfully small? Do the leaf margins get scorched around the edges late in the summer? All of those are signs that the tree is not getting enough water. The one nice thing about trees growing more slowly than we do is that you've got some time to notice that the tree is not getting enough water. It's not like if we didn't drink enough water for a week or two, that'd be it. The tree has a couple years before things really get serious. So you have time to notice those symptoms of the tree in decline before it's too late to do anything.
We saw a lot of moisture on Tuesday, record rainfall here in the Denver area. After a big event like that, how long should you wait to water?
It depends again on the location and the type of tree. It's going to be, I would guess, at least a week. We've got some warm temperatures coming this weekend. If you've got a thirsty tree that's in an exposed site, things might dry down more quickly than you might otherwise imagine. For drought-tolerant trees, established trees, those with nice moisture-retentive soil, it could be even longer than that, up to even perhaps a month. Then by then we could have more moisture in store for us.
Finally, what's the biggest takeaway that you want people to remember when it comes to watering in the fall and the winter?
That it is important to water your trees and shrubs in the fall, especially fall and early winter. Once the tree is completely dormant, it's January and February, this becomes less urgent. Still, if we have a long warm period, you might consider it. But it is most important as the trees are preparing for and entering dormancy, so at this time of year. So if things get dry again, don't forget to water those trees. Even if the sprinkler system is blown out, it's worth your time to drag the hose out there and give your tree a drink.
Well, thank you so much, John. So much great advice for folks going into the fall and the winter when we do see some drier conditions. And we will catch you back here next week for your First Alert Drought Report.